Okay, today I'm going to talk about righteousness. Righteousness is a scale. Now, you know one of those old scales you see in courthouses a lot, where you put a weight in one hand and that hand goes down and one hand goes up, and then you put an equally sized weight that's in this hand to even out, and that's where you get the notion of fairness or an agreement or balance um, or justice. Now, so that's kind of interesting. Justice and fairness actually stem from acting out righteousness, this scale system. And there's a saying in the Old Testament. A lot of people have heard it. It goes an eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth. So there's the notion that that righteousness, these hands, symbolize a transgression. One hand symbolizes transgressions, and the other hand symbolizes how to meet that transgression's fulfillment, to equalize out, to get yourself righteousness, a state of fairness, a state of agreement. Um, Now, not all situations are agreed upon, but I think you understand what I mean. Now, there is some error with this, with righteousness, and that has to do with the people in general, of course. Where do we stem from? Do we stem from practicing righteousness, self-awareness, self-accountability, which I've talked about in the index of self-aware? Um, or are we the type of people that just live in the moment, that live based off of our heart, not necessarily connected to your mind, or your utterance, which people are understood as a hypocrite. You know, you you speak one thing, but you act upon completely the opposite. You're not you're not making yourself accountable. There's a lot of people like that live in the moment. They live in comfort. They live based off of animal um, instincts, animal reactions, instead of subjugating that part of them, uh, practicing to mold themselves unto leaning towards life. By default, people tend to lean towards a dead situation, and I'll go into other videos talking about those in more detail. So, righteousness. Um, say you're a righteous person, and say I'm a righteous person. Say you want to deck me. um, but you consider within yourself, well, if I deck that person, well, that gives him the right to deck me. And you say to yourself, well, I don't mind getting decked by him because I really don't like what he's saying, so I'm just going to deck him, and I can withstand that one deck. It's a cost I can bear. So out of the blue, boom, you deck me, and then boom, I deck you back. And then let's say we separate, and we both live by righteousness. So there's an error in living in righteousness in that perspective. Now, there's other notions that, of course, you need to take in consideration is, if you deck me, am I going to act righteous to you, or am I going to try to destroy you? Now, that is more based off of our animal instincts. I did this test when I was little. I had a really good friend, and I said, okay, I'm going to back myself in a corner. I want you to hit my chest. Keep hitting it. I want to see if I can control myself. And I just put my hands to the side, and eventually, boom, I just decked him so hard he was crying. And the point of the story is that there we can we need there's a we're all going through growth. We're all going through a living situation. Just because we think one way doesn't mean we act that way. So that's why I've really, if you want to check my video in the index of persona, what kind of person you want to be for yourself, um, you'll understand that we're working against to be something more than what we were the day before. At least I am, and I would hope you guys listening too would kind of want to lean towards that way too, leaning towards life than leaning towards death. it is very easy to live in a state. Okay, here's another kind of example. Say, like, typically, at least from a guy's perspective, from my perspective, is that if you hit me, my impulse is to destroy you. I, I'm not thinking of righteousness, but because I practice righteousness and I practice self-awareness, self-accountability, even though you initiate the hit, I'll act in kind and match it. That's if I have in my forethought trying to practice righteousness with, of course, self-awareness. Now, if I now then there's this notion here. Now, I've talked about an eye for an eye, tooth for tooth. There's another notion that I hear a lot of people spouting, and they don't know really what it means. It's judge not. You shouldn't judge. You're a Christian. You shouldn't judge. I know in the Bible it says you shouldn't judge. Okay, the notion here is there's parts of it left out. First off, the full verse is don't judge lest don't judge lest you be judged. For what judgment you judge shall be judged unto you. So you take half of that. The first part, leave out for now. The second part shows righteousness, an eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth. Meaning, if you do judge, if you carry out a judgment, the actions taken out, the same weight of righteousness will be carried out back at you eventually. Or to be, not only that, it's not a warning of that. The point of those verses is to set your mind on it. So even if you can't, if you can't hold yourself from judging, at least judge with the same measurement that you would measure unto yourself. So the context here, there's other verses that kind of go together here that now in the index of words, there I talk about words, context, and actions. Here in these verses in the New Testament, there's the notion that there's this other verse that go together with this, that complete this more to give you more perspective. It's turn the other cheek. I believe you heard that before. Someone slaps you, turn the other cheek, right? Now, I gave you the example that I had my friend hit me. A friend I loved, I cared about, but my reaction was a decking back. We can be pushed so far, and depending on our life and growth and how we mold ourselves down the road, we can mold ourselves to the point where someone hits us and we turn the other cheek. Now, do we turn the other cheek? Now, how do we turn the other cheek? Do we turn the other cheek in spite? It's like, yeah, hit me again. Do we tempt them? Do we bait them? Is that leaning towards life? I would say no. I would actually still say it's leaning towards death, even if we turn our other cheek. But the concept here is judge not lest you be judged. It's that lean towards life. Give the benefit of the doubt. Try to evaluate the situation with self-awareness. Even though he's hitting you, he hit you, you still see worth in him, that person. There's worth in everyone. And I think everyone should be given the benefit of the doubt, even if they fail. Because you can change as a person. And in knowing that, they can change as a person. They can learn from their own actions. They can be self-aware. They can understand righteousness, especially the notion of fairness. All right. So, there we go. Righteousness. Consider these things. There's a transgression. The transgression needs to equalize out. Now, I talked about justice and fairness in the side of interactions with man. Later on, when I talk about the Bible, there's going to be a standard that God places on his people. And at one time, and there's another time where God places a standard upon all of human people, all of people. So there's there's different agreements, there's different things to take in consideration, different times, and just like you have different experiences with other people in them transgressing you, and you trying to fulfill that transgression. I mean, there's the notion of forgiveness. Yeah, but the notion of forgiveness is because, like I said, you see worth in them. They can change. They can be a better person. You were in their place at one time, but you became a better person because you practice self-awareness, self-accountability. Um, you practice righteousness, all towards the focus of which way are you leaning towards, life or death. Now I'm going to end it with explaining life and death. Now, when I say life, I say not just life itself, but peace. And actually, I'm going to make a video really expanding upon that on the index. I'm going to label it as the index of rationalizing God. So when I'm saying life, I'm saying the source of life, God himself. And uh, you'll better understand what I mean by that in that video to come. Now, when I say death, I say degradation. I'm going to make a video in the index, degradation, a state of taking enjoyment in cruelty, taking enjoyment uh, um, in in getting together and condemning a person or hitting a person when he's down. Um, there's enjoyment in this stuff. I enjoy this stuff. I love hitting a person when he's down. I love trolling. But do I take part of it? That's the thing. That's the thing. I know that of me, of myself. Do I do I try to not take part of it? Because I know if I take part of it, I mean, these actions, they're very enjoyable. It is fun to just yell at someone. Oh man, talk about release. But do I want to be that type of person? Because I know that leads down the path to be a person that's not fulfilled, that's not full of peace, that's not full of life. And if I could live forever, and what if I get to choose what kind of state of being I get to live forever in, I do not want to be in a dead situation. I don't want to be empty. I don't want to be. I don't want to not have peace. I do not want to have. I don't want to be in a situation where I'm saying, "Oh, I've been there. I've done that. Me. I puffed up." It's just, to me, that's death. So I'm going to describe more of that dead situation in the video of degradation. All right, I hope you enjoyed this, give you a different perspective of righteousness and what stems from righteousness, justice, and fairness. Pretty cool stuff. All right, talk to you later.